I think he's ready.
Yeah, I think
So-
Alan's ready for us.
Well, we should call the meeting in order.
Okay, the meeting's been called to order, and those present are Board Member Waters, Board Member Hetzer, and Board Member Patel. And absent is Board Member Martins, and not present is Board Member Gillum. We do have a quorum to proceed, and we have confirmed that we have properly posted the packet and provided notice of this meeting, so you have jurisdiction to proceed with your regular business.
Okay, so the item 1.2, roll call, and so let's start with the new businesses.
Well, we want to take care of our minutes first under item 2.1. See if you,
2.1, approval of the meeting of the July 9, 2020. Does anybody have any question or anything that we'd like to discuss on that? Okay.
I move that we approve the minutes of the July 9th, 2020 meeting.
I'll second that.
Okay, so we got the approval and the second.
Here.
We should approve the meeting, July 9th, 2020 regular meetings.
do you have did you take a vote on that motion?
Okay, so we got the 3 votes, yeah?
All in
Good.
favor?
All in favor, say aye.
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 All. So we got the 3 vote to go.
Our new business items for you today, we have 2 of them. And the first is an application for a certificate of compatibility. And it's been filed by Katie Platten on behalf of Grassroots Efforts LLC. And the request is to allow the renovation of the exterior storefront facade of a building located on Santa Fe Avenue. And the subject property is legally described as the south 1 foot of lot 125, all of lots 127, 129, and 131, and the north 0.7 feet of lot 133. And this property is addressed as 141, 143, and 145 South Santa Fe. So as you look to the screen, the 141 area would start here with 143, and then 145 is, it originally was the same building, or part of the same building, but because of a fire was built back differently and is essentially functions as a separate building. But the 2-story brick and stone building you see on the left, that was constructed in 1910 and had an Italianate style commercial row structure. There was originally 3 50-foot bays, 1, 2, 3 bays, and this bay right here was destroyed by a fire in 1929, and the building was rebuilt using a design that didn't replicate the original. So I think we have in your packets a photo that showed what the building looked like when it was 3 identical storefront, 50-foot storefront bays. And so there is a historical photo that shows what it used to be, but you can see here that now this storefront is pretty different from the original. And so the building is unique from being one of the largest commercial row structures constructed in downtown Salina. Essentially, it has 150 feet of frontage on Santa Fe, and that's one of the largest frontages on that main street. And it does retain some of its original Italianate features, and probably what's most notable would be the arched windows that are still there here and here, but the original ground floor storefronts were remodeled in the 1950s when it became a furniture store, and some of the original visual features were closed over or covered up with wood panels, and then there was a metal canopy that was installed in the building during the 1970s. There's quite a bit of weathering that's taken place. There are panes of glass that have been broken over the years, and some decline in the original features. There's been deterioration in the transom area. And so this was formerly Baldwin's Furniture Store and was most recently occupied by a dance studio. The building to the south was most recently occupied by Corky's Diner, and its staff understanding that Corky's is closed and is not reopening. So these buildings were formerly owned by Royal Realty. They've been acquired now by Grassroots Efforts LLC, and the new owner would like to rehabilitate the interior and exterior facades of the buildings, and most of the facade work is focused on the north two storefronts, and lesser changes are proposed for the south building. But they plan to remove the entire building facade on the first floor of the north portion of the building, remove paint from existing brick on the pilasters, remove and replace existing windows on the second floor. They're going to remove some of the interior staircases that are there, redivide the first floor into separate retail spaces. They're going to demolish walls on the second floor and get it ready for possible future construction of apartments, although that has not been decided yet. That's a phase 2 development, and it could just as well be offices upstairs as apartments, but they're going to do some of the prep work for that now. They were going to remove the storefront on the south building to expose the existing prism glass transom, and I think there's some question about its condition and whether it can be retained. And then I think we indicated that the Sugar Peas tenant space might be converted into office space, but that could be retail space as well. So that's kind of a summary of all the changes made to the building, but as we focus on the exterior, the non-original storefront will be removed and a new storefront that will appear like this will be installed, and deteriorating windows in the second floor will be replaced with aluminum clad wood windows. The cornice at the roof line would be painted to match the cut stone, and they're proposing new signage along the transom area. And the existing transom on this building here will be covered over, and they're looking to do the same type of signage to match. So we've summarized some of the design guidelines we think are applicable here, the guidelines that relate to the use of new materials, guidelines that relate to preserving the character-defining features that are still intact, looking at the original storefront and maintaining features of that if possible, looking at original windows to protect them if possible, but if not, newer replacement windows should match the appearance of the original. And then there are guidelines relating to signage. So as we've looked at this as a staff, on the first floor facade of the north building has lost much of its original detailing over time. Many of those changes occurred in the 1956 remodeling by Baldwin Furniture. The design guidelines recommend preservation of character-defining features that are intact. We do still have character-defining features on the upper story, such as the arched windows, but the first floor facade is no longer in place. So the question for you is whether you believe the proposed PVC material is compatible with the materials on the existing building facade. And our design guidelines say substitute materials may be used if they match the original appearance, finish, and profile as closely as possible. And so there's a transom that went along here, and they're looking at doing a PVC wainscot along there and also down below. And so we have suggested some findings for your consideration: that the proposed storefront, including the wainscot, will be appropriate to scale, durability, color, and texture. We're not removing that we can see any or damaging any significant character-defining features. The intact architectural features of the upper store windows will be preserved, and it appears to us that the signage is proportional to the facade. So as to this item, we've, on page 8, provided you with 4 options. One would be to approve a certificate about compatibility for the proposed exterior renovations. You could approve a certificate of compatibility subject to any conditions approved by majority. You could postpone consideration in order to acquire additional information concerning the proposal, or you could deny the application and provide reasons for that denial. Staff would recommend option 2 with essentially our standard condition that if there's any significant changes to what's been presented to you today, that we will look at that and we will determine whether any additional staff or board review will be required due to those changes. But with that, we have Mr. Rod Crawford here representing the redeveloper of the property, and staff's open to any questions you have about what's in your packet.
Sure. So do you have any other information you would like to add?
I think Dean covered everything. For clarity, though,
If you can come on over here on the podium.
for clarification on the prism glass, the demo notes do say to retain the prism glass in place, but the details actually show the prism glass being infilled on either side. So the intent was never to try to keep the prism glass. And I've been digging around there this week, and once we expose it, it's in pretty bad shape. And yeah, but the reality is the PVC wainscoting is actually in the same position as where the prism glass is in this rendition.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
I'll make a motion that we accept the certificate of compatibility with any major changes to be brought back to the board.
I second it.
Okay, so we have a motion now. Let's take the vote. If everybody is agreed to say aye.
Aye.
Same sign if anybody disagree with that. Okay. So we have motion and vote 3-0. So motion carried.
That motion carried. The other item that we have for you in the way of new business this evening is item 3.2, and that's an application filed by Robert Moeller on behalf of Restore Properties LLC, and that is also requesting approval of a certificate of compatibility to allow the renovation of the existing facade of a building located on South Santa Fe. This particular building is located on the west or east side of the street and is addressed as 215 South Santa Fe. It is directly south of the Norton Wasserman Jones Kelly law offices. And our records indicate that this building was built in the early 1960s, and it was built by Mr. Frank Norton, who was part of the law firm next door, and it was built in a more modern style than many of the buildings downtown. And as you can see from the photograph, it is essentially about 2/5 open windows and about 3/5 solid blank wall. So the building is 25 feet wide, and the lot depth is 120 feet, but this building is set back about 6 feet. And so the building itself is 114 feet deep. And the proposal is to remove this stacked brick and masonry and convert the entire 25-foot front building facade to glass. And we have, again, done a summary of the guidelines that might apply in this case. And we've kind of looked at this, and there seems to be some things in the design guidelines that would support it, and there are some things in the design guidelines that don't support it. But the facade here is pretty much unchanged from the time it was built in 1961. The applicant is proposing to drastically increase the ratio of glass on the facade so that it is almost all glass facade. One question for the board to think about is whether the original facade from 1961 contains any character-defining features that are worthy of preservation. We would request two things of the applicant. One is to just provide information about whether any modification of the existing solid material that covers the facade had been considered at all. And then one thing we weren't clear on from the proposal is whether any type of awning or canopy would be proposed over the new facade. And then our report, we recommended that the board look at surrounding buildings on this block, determine whether you think that change to an all-glass facade would be compatible with the appearance of nearby buildings. So we've looked at things that one policy indicates that you make a finding that the proposed changes will not remove or damage any significant character-defining features. You'd have to conclude that the existing facade contains no character-defining features. Our design guidelines, on the one hand, say avoid a blank wall appearance that does not provide interest to pedestrians, and that's pretty much a blank wall. It says that large glass surfaces should be divided into smaller windows that are in scale with those seen traditionally. The flip side of that says that original storefronts and their components should be restored rather than replaced wherever possible. And then it also speaks to maintaining the original ratio of window and storefront openings to solid wall. So again, we've identified the 4 choices for you on this case would be to approve a certificate of compatibility for the building modifications as proposed, approve the modifications subject to any conditions approved by the board, postpone consideration to acquire additional information, or you could deny the application as presented and present your findings in that regard. Our recommendation would be to review the application, take any additional information presented at today's hearing, and to take the action you think is in the best interest of preserving the existing character of downtown Salina, which is your primary role as a board. And so I think staff's 2 main questions was just to clarify whether any consideration was given to modifying instead of removing the masonry facade, and then clarify for the benefit of the board whether any kind of awning or canopy is anticipated that would come out in this area. So first of all, staff would be open to any questions you have about the packet or information in it.
Alrighty, so do you have any more information you would like to add before?
We did consider trying to keep the brick and add windows in that area to break up that solidness, and it just didn't work very well. So doing full glass, now it will have paneling in it, so it's not going to be just a solid piece of glass. And then we do not have any plans for an awning.
Okay. So I'll bring the matter to discussion for the board.
What type of paneling will you have?
Do you have a picture of it?
There should be, there should have been
Oh.
a
Drawing?
foundation submitted with it.
Yeah,
Okay.
there it is.
So the way this building is constructed is concrete beams stretched between the two buildings. So it creates a unique situation with the front of that basically all of the structure is supported behind the storefront. The entire structure of this building, including the roof structure, is concrete. So it is a very, very dark building inside, and this is mainly an attempt to get as much natural light inside the building as we can. So we even plan to do glass walls inside for the office space to let the natural light flow clear to the back of the building.
Okay, so I have a question for the staff. Does this new changes, meets the downtown guideline? Or like the new glass panel, is it accordance with the guideline by
Well,
nearby?
as I mentioned, there's no guidelines. There's no strict answer. It's up to you to give. The two that seem to conflict with each other is we have one policy that says you should maintain the original ratio of window and storefront openings to solid wall. But we also have a policy in that same area that says avoid a blank wall appearance that does not provide interest to pedestrians. And so what is there today with this basically being an uninteresting blank wall is not very inviting to pedestrians and not necessarily attractive. So it is not opposed to a guideline. It's just what they're proposing to do is eliminate a blank wall appearance to gain additional natural light. And so what we provided there on page 4 was those first 3 findings at the top of the page would support approval of the project. And if you were concerned that they should maintain the same ratio of window and storefronts openings to solid wall that it had originally, then that would lead you to maybe a different decision. But we just wanted to lay both of those out there. And if you find that blank wall is not a positive as far as the exterior appearance, then going to the all glass, if you consider that an improvement, then that would certainly be supported by the guidelines, which indicate that we should avoid blank walls that don't provide any interest.
Thank you. Artie, for the board.
I would agree that blank wall does nothing for the aesthetics of that.
No.
It's right across from my office, and you can't even, previously when there was a big sign up there, you couldn't even see the sign if you were just at the right angle. And as far as historically, I don't think that it adds or takes away from anything on that east side of that block, because everything has been redone at this point.
Yeah. This might be one of the few buildings that's essentially untouched from when it was built in
Yeah.
'61.
So does anyone have any question that the material they are using or glass panel they are using? Okay. Then I will bring the matter for the motion, if we have a motion on it.
I move that we go with staff's recommendation on option 2, and that if there are any significant changes, to bring them back to the staff and possibly to this board for a second review.
I'll second that.
Okay, so now we have a motion and second, and I would like to, vote on it. So if everybody agreed to the motion, say aye.
Aye.
The same sign if we are not agree on, anyone is not agree on that. Okay, so we have vote 3-0, and the motion carried.
So we'll get you a letter out on that summarizing today's action, also to you, Rod, and we'll communicate what the board's action was today. And I know we have a pending building permit for the 141, 143. Are you pretty close to being getting ready on 215 to start this?
Yes.
Okay. All right, we have a permit for both interior and exterior work at the 141 address, so we're in the midst of reviewing that as well. I have just a couple housekeeping items under other business, and that is everyone needs to we can check the terms. I think we did that a while back in Mr. Patel's absence. He was elected vice chair, but only till the end of August, so that we will, what occurs is that all of our board and commission member terms, if you are coming to the end of your term, the changeover is on August 31st. And then if there are new appointments, we will have a business meeting in September to have officers for the coming year. So you're only stuck as vice chair for maybe one more meeting. So
That's all right.
The other thing is that we had a resolution that went to the city commission, and so the planning commission, the design review board are only meeting once a month instead of twice a month. Just we've got reduced staffing and other things. So by my calendar, you'd be scheduled to meet next on the 13th of August. And I'm working with somebody on the opposite side of the street at 248 South Santa Fe, where they're doing some work, and I just need to determine whether that's something that staff can approve administratively or would come to you, but it's likely that we may have some business for our August meeting, and then we will for sure have a meeting in September. Just even if we don't have agenda items, we'll have our regular business meeting in September. So we appreciate you all attending today, and we'll look forward to seeing you the second Thursday of August.
Okay. Alrighty, so if we don't have any other item, then we should adjourn the meeting.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
I second it.
Okay, so if everybody is agreed to the motion and the vote on it,
Aye.
Aye.
okay, so meeting adjourned.
Doesn't look like anybody's opposed. So.
No vote on that.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yep.
All right.